Hey, what's up, guys? It's MTG Man. As you all know, I asked for some tips on how to play Pauper. Didn't really get any, but I've kind of started. I played a couple rounds, played a couple online with friends, gone to a event local. Um, and now that I have a little bit of a better grasp, here are 20 cards I'd like to see downshifted to common because I just want to see how they would interact with the current Pauper metagame. As I've heard before, and a lot of people say, Pauper is legacy and sorry, legacy. Yeah, legacy answers to draft threats. All right, like a lot of the cards, creature wise, are not very strong. Um, and it does have some very powerful spells. Your lightning bolts, your counter spells, whatever. Um, here are some things I'd like to see implemented. So first off, Ob Nixilis the Hate Twisted. He's a 5 mana planeswalker. There currently are no planeswalkers in Pauper, so it would be interesting in general just to see a planeswalker added to the metagame. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they lose a life. You can go -2 to destroy a creature, and its controller draws 2 cards. So again, this is still Pauper. There are ways to remove it. It can be dealt damage. I don't think it's too strong to where it would warp a format around itself. However, I do think it would be interesting to see implemented, see how deck building would change, or if it would really change at all, because I don't think it's of a high enough power level to where it would cause too much of an impact. Next up is Finn the Fangbearer. I think creature decks are very weak in Pauper to begin with, and trying to do a Death Touch poison creature deck, uh, that's gonna have to be like your opponent's first priority is gonna be getting rid of your Death Touchers instead of just killing you, because Finn can lead to you winning in a different way than just 20 damage pretty quickly. Him having Death Touch himself, you just need him and 4 other Death Touchers. That's game. I think there are ways to get him in. I'm not sure if Rogue's Passage is legal in Historic Brawl. Bro, why I say Historic Brawl? Fucking Pauper, but if it is, that'd be a way. Oof, a little tired. I don't know why I said Historic Brawl. Next up is Laboratory Maniac. I think there are definitely the self-mill cards to make this deck work. Um, I just don't think. I'm not sure. I don't think it would really change Pauper. I think it would just expand the metagame, allow a new deck into the format. Because I think Tome Scour is legal in Pauper. I think there are ways to mill yourself. There are ways to draw yourself out. So I don't think it would become overpowered. I think it would just add some more variety. Next up is Moonblessed Cleric. So I think this could be a little bit of a problem. I think Boggle decks are probably good enough without it. However, I always want to just expand it a little bit more, just see what could happen. I think Moonblessed Cleric helping you get your best aura out of the deck would really help Boggles. Because I have played Boggles once or twice, and it feels slower than it should. Like, it feels like you should be able to get your Boggle out turn 1, your auras out turn 2, 3, and then you take over the game. But it just never seems to work that way. So I think a little bit of consistency could help. Next up is Psychotog. So you can discard a card to give it +1/+1. Remove 2 cards from your graveyard to give it +1/+1. It's a 1/2 for 3. I think it would add a premium threat to the format. I mean, you already have Tolarian Terror is probably the only real threat. I think this would be able to go up against it. It has variable power and toughness, so it'll keep your opponent guessing. And I think it's just definitely a new creature option, or it would be. Same with Sprouting Thrynax. So it creates 3 Saprolings after it dies. This used to go in Jund decks back in 2013, if I remember. So it would definitely add to the deck's power. I don't think there's really a creature like this in Pauper that, dies and then gives you value with a bunch of tokens. I think it would just be an interesting addition. Plus, I would like to see more colors being played in a deck, since a lot of decks in Pauper seem to be two-colored. At least 2 colors tops. Next up is Vengeful Reaper. So this is kind of just like a keyword soup type of card. Flying Death Touch Haste on a 2/3 flyer. Again, I think it would be a little bit of a threat, but not really like a threat, just something to get on the board. Just something new. I want to see cards that are new, that are different, because I think the metagame is a bit stale, honestly. I've only been playing for so long, but it feels like I see that, like, a couple decks. I see Tron, I see Affinity, I see Burn, and, like, it feels like it's really stale. Next up is Cunning Breeze Dancer. So this could get a little bit crazy, but it would definitely be a premium threat. 6 mana, 4/4 flying. Whenever you cast a non-creature, gets +2/+2. We do have 0 mana artifacts, and we do have powerful spells. So I think it'd be interesting to see it all come together. It can fly, which I haven't really come across too much flying in Pauper, but I think it would be a very premium threat. Kind of like Gold Knight Redeemer, which is less of a premium threat. However, I feel it would be a good, like, bring, I don't want to say bring the game back, but, like, if you're at a low life total, you've got like a couple tokens out, you bring it out, oh, you gain like 10 life. 10 life in a lot of formats isn't a lot. However, it would be a great way to gain life in this format with a limited card pool, and I don't think it's too strong. Red Dragon is kind of like the counterbalance to it. 6 mana would deal 4 damage to your opponent when it hits the ground. Well, hits the air because it has flying. I think it would give burn decks a new option. I think it could be a great top end for certain decks. I'd just like to see something else, something new at the table. I think maybe eventually would get stale, but that's what, 20% of their life total. So you slam it down 20% of their life, and it's something new. Next up is the rack. So if an opponent has less than 3 cards during their upkeep, it deals 1 damage to them for each card less than 3. So the how playing Pauper, my deck uses Ren's Resolve and Reckless Impulse to exile instead of having more cards in hand, and a lot of times I do tend to run low on cards. So I think the rack would be a good way to punish this. It's burn. It's gonna help maybe speed up the format. I don't know. I'm not really sure what exactly it would do. Next up is Rebuff the Wicked. So it counters a spell that targets permanent you control. I've kind of noticed that white is not the best in Pauper. And just a narrow counter spell that would give white a little bit more of a fighting chance, especially with creatures being so easy to remove. Just being like, no, for 1 mana is pretty good, I would say. Next up is Moon Mist. So there are a handful of werewolves in Pauper, and I think seeing a werewolf deck would would be interesting. So let's see, common werewolves. There's at least 10, I believe. Yeah, So you have options. I think it would be an interesting like off meta deck. Um, just as I keep saying, it's something different. Seeing an off meta deck, seeing werewolves. Um, and I mean, they're not all great, but some of them are pretty good. And would just be different metagame threats, different decks that could be built. Just something to shake it all up. Next up is Thud. I don't believe there are any fling type effects in Pauper that I've seen. And I think this would be cool for Boggles decks because sometimes they do have trouble getting in. Just throw them over. Next up is Pyroclasm. So End the Festivities is already in the format. However, I do think another red sweeper might help red decks finish games a little bit better. I do think it could possibly end up being a little bit overpowered because I know End the Festivities sees quite a bit of play, especially like I've said earlier, creatures are weaker. But I think Pyroclasm would definitely be maybe not a staple, but it would see some play. Next up is Spore Burst. As I said earlier, two color decks I think is the most I've seen. I think I've seen a three color deck, but Pauper likes to keep its colors down because the mana fixing isn't great. I think having a better reward for domain, just something for having different land types out would be beneficial, help diversify the decks. And I mean, it could be 5/1/1s for 4 mana. I don't think it's really a great card. However, as I've said earlier, the threats aren't really premium, and that is quite a couple 1/1s. It could end up doing something. Next up is Slave of Bolas. So it steals a creature, and you sacrifice that creature at the next end step. I think this would be cool because if we're going to introduce some bigger threats, we might as well have an answer that's more than an answer because it's removal, yes, but you're also going to get to swing in with that creature. I think that's really neat. And I I mean, I'm constantly having my things bolted and abraded and counterspelled. So this feels more impactful, I guess. I don't know. I just like it. Next up is Goblin Bombardment. So I play a Goblin Burn deck. So I would love this to finish off games. This is probably never gonna happen. This would probably be broken. However, I would like to see it. I'd like to be able to throw my goblins at people. You know, it's my thing. Ominous Seas. So, as I've said previously, threats are not as big. Tolarian Terror is like a 5/5, I think, and it's pretty prominent in the format. Ominous Seas, you get a foreshadow counter on it every time you draw a card. You remove 8 and create an 8/8 Kraken. So, I feel like I keep repeating myself, but removal is good in Paupers, so the 8/8 might not stick around. However, this would be an interesting deck. Interesting to build around. You can cycle it if you need to get it out of your hand. It's different. Yeah, then the last card is Pyrohemia. So at the beginning of your end step, if there are no creatures, sacrifice it. Then you can pay 1 red to deal 1 damage to each creature and each player. This is just another one of those I want to burn things cards because I really like burn. If you can't tell, these cards were originally also going to be on the list because I just really like burn. But no, I think Pyrohemia would be a good sweeper. I do think it could get a bit out of hand, and I'm not sure if there's really enough enchantment removal in the format, but I think it would help diversify the decks. It would be a staple in burn. So yeah, in the comments, tell me why I'm wrong and how I haven't played enough Pauper to know, and all my opinions are incorrect. So like, just let me know. What do you guys think?